David Fincher has made some of the most iconic movies of the last 30 years or so, and I like a lot of them, so I'm gonna rank them. Alien 3 is a consensus worst Fincher movie pretty much. Yeah, this movie really is bad. I'm not a fan of the first two Alien movies. They're boring and cheesy at the same time, not a good combo. But Alien 3 is significantly worse than the first two, and even Fincher knows this. He didn't even want to make this movie, and you can tell because it's very directionless and totally goes against everything the first two movies and what they were setting up. The characters all get screwed, and the plot isn't even interesting at all, yet this is the clear worst of the trilogy and the worst Fincher movie. I don't even really consider it one of his main movies, just because it feels so distant from the man's career. 3 out of 10. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button is the weirdest movie that Fincher ever made. It has none of his signature crime stuff, and it's also not directed very memorably. Fincher has the ability to turn a mediocre script into something really entertaining and intense, and this movie doesn't really have any of that. I really like movies about people just getting to know each other and stuff, like chill stories just about humans, but I don't think the story here is that memorable. It's also so gimmicky with the age, which I also find kind of disgusting and uncomfortable. The baby stuff at the start is especially cursed and weird. I also don't like this stupid narration stuff that movies from this era did where they made an old person tell a story. There's no reason for it, and it created unnecessary scenes. Brad Pitt is fine, I guess, but he doesn't really try to be that great. He's pretty standard. I never wanted to watch this movie, and all the problems I thought I would have with it, I ended up having. 4 out of 10. Before making this video, I had watched an embarrassingly low amount of Fincher movies, and that's because a lot of the ones I hadn't seen didn't really interest me, and Mank especially just did not seem like something I would like. A biopic in black and white about a man I had never heard about, count me out. And yeah, this movie was boring, and I still don't give a crap about the main guy in this movie. He's just a bunch of cliche tropes from old Hollywood movies meshed into one. I don't really like Citizen Kane that much. I know, call me crazy, but I think more people just care about the influence of the movie instead of just judging it from a fair point of view. So a movie about the man writing the script is just not my thing at all. I will say there were some enjoyable moments when we got to know the main guy, and the runtime wasn't as long as other biopics, and Fincher's direction is as amazing as always, enough to make it a 5 out of 10. The Game is the only Fincher movie I straight up didn't know existed before making this video, and I can totally understand why. This movie has become kind of forgotten in his filmography. It's pretty forgettable. Michael Douglas is pretty good, and it's funny to see him get trolled like crazy, but the plot is kind of uninteresting, and I've just seen so much stuff like it that I don't care about these kind of movies anymore. Fincher does the most he can with his dull script, but it doesn't end up blowing you away in any aspect. It's a pretty entertaining watch, and I wasn't suffering like I was watching movies like Mank or Alien 3 at times, but basically nothing sticks with you once the movie is over. At least that was my experience. This is the most 6 out of 10 movie ever made. Panic Room is a good example of David Fincher being an awesome director. I think his movies are worse than other guys like Tarantino or Nolan, but his direction is a lot better than both of those guys. There's very few people who can turn a seemingly generic script like Panic Room and make it a thrilling experience that never gets boring for a second. Everything is so tightly paced and intense, you never know what the heck is going to happen to Jodie Foster and her daughter. Every decision feels like it's risking their life. I also liked all 3 of the thief characters. Until the end I thought that was a bit of a cop-out. But they made parts of the movie that would usually be boring really entertaining. This movie doesn't have some profound message, and it doesn't really explore the inner struggles of humans like a lot of other Fincher movies. I think that makes it less of a classic compared to other movies, but it's still really entertaining. Kind of like The Game, where nothing sticks with you, but it's fun in the moment. Except it's a little better. 7 out of 10. The Killer is the newest Fincher movie, and I actually had a really good time with it. I see a lot of people hate on this movie and say that it's trying to appeal to film bros and literally me people, similar to other classic Fincher movies, but I think that's unfair, because that's the audience's fault. This is one of the most entertaining Fincher movies for me personally, just because I love the soundtrack so much. I'm a big music fan, definitely more than movies or shows or any medium. And as an avid Smiths listener and Portishead listener, I got so excited whenever those songs came on. Pretty much every song in here is fire, and it made for a great time. Whenever the kind of boring moment showed up, they would play a banger song and my attention was immediately focused. The main performance is solid and the plot is okay. Not really anything special, so this is a bit of a personal ranking. I could see why people don't like this as much now that I think about it. I like it though. 7 out of 10. The Social Network is a movie that I have a really weird relationship with. I used to think this was one of the most overrated movies of all time, and Jesse Eisenberg was an insufferable asshole who made it a horrible experience. But the second time I watched it, I enjoyed it quite a bit, and thought his character was perfectly done. But it still has some flaws with Justin Timberlake's character, and a lack of explanation and good reasoning for a lot of major plot points. Like, everything happens just because Zuckerberg is an asshole, and there's not really an explanation. The third time I watched it though, everything clicked, and it even became one of my favorite movies. I even thought Andrew Garfield had one of the best performances of the decade. This was my #1 Fincher movie for like a year, and then I watched it again, and it just didn't hold up at all. I still like this movie and think there are some amazing scenes, but there's also a lot of moments that I just barely remember, and some major plot points that are kind of just breezed over. The best part of this movie is the direction, just like most Fincher movies, with the soundtrack being second. The script is pretty great too. I see more people saying this is the best movie of all time every year, and I am so not on board with that at the moment. I just think all the developing of Facebook stuff is rushed way too quickly. Still like a 7 out of 10 though. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is easily the most underrated Fincher movie in my opinion. Literally nobody talks about this movie, and they rank it in the middle and lower parts of the list, which made me not want to watch it for a long time. But man, this movie is really entertaining. It's probably the most disturbing Fincher movie, with some horrible and disgusting characters. Elizabeth goes through so much, and I just had to look away at some of those scenes. This movie has a lot of focus on the mistreatment of women, and how it could lead them to having a negative outlook on the world, which is honestly deserved, because some people should not have rights. The crime parts of this movie aren't mind-blowing. It's a pretty standard crime story that isn't as full of twists and turns like other better Fincher movies, but the direction is really on point like usual. Some of the snow shots look incredible. I love snowy atmospheres, and this is one of the best uses of one, even if they are inside a lot of the time. I'm curious to how the original movies compare, because so much of the appeal for this one is the direction, which is great and makes it a 7 out of 10. David Fincher is known for crime movies, and most of his best movies are crime movies, in my opinion. This top 5 is filled with them, and Zodiac is just another great one. This one is less focused on action, and more about what goes on behind the scenes in order to catch a killer. There are some intense scenes, but overall, that best stuff is when it's just Jake, Robert, and Mark talking and figuring stuff out. The fact that this actually happened makes it so much better in my opinion, because it's such a fascinating story. The movie absolutely does it justice, and it tricks you into thinking that we are going to get a reveal. I seriously gaslight myself into thinking we're going to find out who the Zodiac Killer is every time, even though I know there's no answer. That just shows how incredible the investigation stuff is, and how it makes you care about the case. Oftentimes the case is just a plot device to create some epic cop scenes, but this movie could not be more different. The main character is barely even a detective, which is a crazy guy to make a movie about. Great movie though, 8 out of 10. Fight Club is one of those movies I don't even want to talk about. Like, it's Fight Club. It's one of the most iconic movies of all time. Everybody knows everything about this movie, and yeah, it's great. Tyler Durden is one of the most ahead of its time and awesome characters ever. The pixie scene at the end is a masterpiece, and the twist is still mind-blowing. I hate fans of this movie that misinterpreted everything it's about, but the movie is great. 8 out of 10. Gone Girl feels like a movie that I shouldn't love that much. A large part of it is about the press and the media, which is not my favorite topic. I also really don't like Ben Affleck in anything he's been in, including this, but this movie is just so awesome. Amy Dunn is such a cool character, and is the heart and soul of this movie. She carries this thing on her back for a major part of it, and honestly I'm totally okay with that. Fincher also directs the shit out of this movie. Like, there are so many intense scenes that have you on the edge of your seat. Even the most random thing will have you thinking someone was about to get murdered or something. It's super stressful, but also so fun. There's a lot of important criticisms of modern day marriages, especially in suburban areas. We act like we've been freed from older America where women were treated lesser than men, but in reality, it's not that much of a difference. Gender norms are still present, and this movie exposes them and flips it on its head. 8 out of 10. Seven is just one of the best crime movies of all time. Everything is done perfectly. The direction here is so tight, so intense, makes your heart beat like crazy, and you never know what the heck is going to happen next. The plot isn't even that crazy until the end, which I've seen people complain about, but I don't really think this is a problem. It's all set up. Everything seems like fairly normal crime stuff, and then Kevin Spacey shows up and everything changes. You've heard it a million times, but the final act of this movie is one of the best of all time. It's so unexpected on first watch, like it will have your jaw on the floor, and you just feel for Brad Pitt, but can't help but be amazed at how awesome this stuff is. When Kevin Spacey reveals she was pregnant, it's just peak acting and peak David Fincher. The lack of depth for a lot of these characters kinda makes me care a little less than maybe I would have hoped, but I still love this movie, and it actually used to be on my Letterboxd favorites for a while. It's not anymore though. Still a 9 out of 10, awesome movie.